Hello everybody, it is Professor Parish, and this video we are going to talk about MLA, the Modern Language Association, citation, and all that good stuff. So buckle in because this is a refresher on MLA. If you seem like you're very proficient in MLA, please stick around, watch the video, because there may be something that I talk about that you need to know for our assignments in the future, for our upcoming papers. With paper 1, we don't really use MLA a lot because it's mainly about narrative and creative writing and fiction and nonfiction. So there's not really a need for citations unless you just blatantly cite or mention an article that someone else has written. However, for papers 2 and 3 on poetry and drama, and especially for paper 4, our research paper, we are going to use citation quite a bit. So I understand that everyone taking this class comes from a different background with citation. Some of you are fresh out of high school. Maybe your English teacher had you write an MLA. Maybe they didn't. Maybe some of you haven't taken an English class in 10 years. And so you're like, well, you know, citation was a lot different back when I did it, which is very true. And maybe some of you just have never experienced MLA or are not familiar with it. So I understand that we are all coming from very different backgrounds in terms of citations and MLA, which is why I'm making this video to give you all the up-to-date current citation information. So on our page, if you go to resources, in week 1, there is the presentation on MLA, and I put it in week 1 because I always want it there available for you all to look at, because this presentation and this video kind of encompasses almost everything in the class except for paper 1. So this is always here for you to look at, and I'm glad to see some people have downloaded it already. And this video we're going to talk about the presentation and just go over some basics with MLA. Alright, so starting off, one thing that is very important is that the first part of this presentation I'm going to talk about picking sources. And this will really have more to do with paper 4 than anything else. So if in the video you feel the need to skip ahead a little bit, just feel free to do so. But for paper 4, you do need to come back and watch this segment. So either watch it all now or split it up however you want to. But I want to talk first about picking credible sources, because this is important. We live in a extremely saturated world of sources from every different direction. 100 years ago, when MLA was first founded, well, it was founded more than 100 years ago, but when MLA was first founded, we really only had texts such as books to cite. So it was such a lengthy process for a book to be written that it was regarded that they were factual if they were published. Now, anybody can start a blog. Anyone can create a website. Anyone can put information out there, whether it's truthful or not. And that makes it more imperative that we as readers and we as consumers of information make sure that we are checking ourselves, that we're double checking our sources, that we're making sure that what we're accessing is factual and not the quote-unquote fake news. So, in order to persuade your audience too, because we have to think of it this way, you as a writer, you're not just trying to entertain your readers, you are also in fact persuading them. Now, you may be persuading them that your paper is good, and that's it, but you are still persuading nonetheless. And in order to be a good person of persuasion, you need to make sure that your sources are from these 4 points here, that they are unbiased, or as we'll talk about in a minute, they acknowledge their bias, they are from a credible source, they are factual or a personal testimony, and that they are relevant and timely. So, bias with a source. Anymore, I would say that most authors, whether they intend to or not, have some bias when they write. And it's hard to avoid that unless you go to like a consensus document or something that's completely objective, that's just straight factual information. Almost anything written by a person that acknowledges that they were wrote by a person has that bias included. So you have either 2 options, well 3 really. One of the options is that you're dishonest, and I don't recommend that, because if your reader finds out that you're dishonest, you will lose credibility as a writer, and your message you're trying to promote will instantly be lost. So you can either write specifically objective factual information only and hope that your readers find it not dry and bland, or you can acknowledge the bias when it happens. So by acknowledging it, you're being transparent. You are letting your audience know that, yes, I realize that my information may seem biased, but here's why I'm using it. As long as you are truthful and transparent to your audience, then you're not tricking them into believing something that's not factual. You're acknowledging that, yeah, this source is biased, but I'm using it for a specific reason. So, for example, and I know my little word bubble here is marking it off, but if I used a New York Times article and I knew the author was clearly having a sort of bias, I could frame it in my paper like this. Although Jernigan's writing has been labeled as quote-unquote highly conservative by the New York Times, I still feel he makes a valid point about immigration reform, and one that needs to be explored further. And you'll notice I have my little in-text citation here, which we'll go over soon. So as long as you point out a bias, I don't feel like that's misleading your audience or deceiving them. It's only when you try to pass something off as completely factual without acknowledging it that it becomes a problem. So that's just something to keep your mind on as you write. Site credibility. When you access a site, and this is especially for paper number 4, you will have to have sources. The nice thing about MLA and citations are that you can cite pretty much anything. Interviews, books, articles, websites, blogs, videos, newspapers, broadcasts, textbooks, emails, tweets. You can cite almost anything in MLA, which is awesome. My one stipulation as an English instructor is that you better not be using Wikipedia, WikiHows, About.coms, or any editable sites. I will not count them as credible. And here is why. I do list 3 reasons here. 1, anyone can create an account and edit information on these sites. Anyone can create an account and add information about topics, and it may take days, weeks, or months for moderators to see false information and correct it. Here is my story for you all for this video. When I was in college, my senior year, I had a boy in my class named Jairus Bellamy, and this was right around the time that Wikipedia, we had one of our teachers telling us about Wikipedia and how we should not use it as a source. And he said this exact same information. And so my friend Jairus decided to make a point of it, and he went to Wikipedia and he found Frank Sinatra's entry on Wikipedia. And back then you could just edit the site without creating an account. Now they make you create an account, but you can still edit. And he edited the entry on Frank Sinatra to say that he was Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor and that he gave Frank Sinatra's eulogy. Totally made this up. None of it was true. And for about 6 months, Wikipedia said that Jairus Bellamy was Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor and gave the eulogy at his funeral. It said that. And after 6 months, the Wikibots, or whoever the moderators are, caught on that this was false information and quickly went back and changed it. However, within that 6 months, there had been dozens of websites, YouTube videos, and articles online that cited Jairus as Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor and the giver of his eulogy, which is all horse hockey. None of it happened. It was all complete lies. And Jairus did that to show just how the lack of credibility on these sites is apparent. And I tell all of my students this story because the information may very well be corrected, but you don't know how much trajectory that false information gains until that moment. So if you are somebody that is a Wikipedia junkie and you just like getting on Wikipedia, then you know what? Go to Wikipedia to the entry that you're looking for, scroll to the bottom of the page, and see what Wikipedia is citing from, and cite those sources. But if I see Wikipedia as a source listed, or WikiHows, any wikis of any kind, or about.com, I will not count it as a source. And you will get point stocked because it's not a good practice. I feel like you should get away from it. Don't use Wikipedia as a source is the thesis of this slide. But yeah, go look it up. Go look up Jerris Bellamy, Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor, and see if you can find an article, because I guarantee they're still out there. I mean, this was several years ago, but he trolled everyone, and it's amazing just what you can get away with. All right, now, if you're not familiar with the domain names on website URLs, there are 4 basic types. You have .com or .net, .org, .edu, and .gov. And I've ordered these from most sketchy and that you need to check out real close to, nah, it's factual, you're good. .com or .net, those are commercial domains, which means that anybody can purchase that domain. So I can go out and buy English122.com for like $60 a year and post whatever I want on it. It's that easy. If you've got money, you can create a website and post whatever you want and hope that people believe you. So I do ask that you be very cautious when looking at .com or .net sites. Now, the obvious caveat to that is hospital and medical sites. A lot of them use .com or .nets because they are commercial and they're easy to access. So if you're citing a hospital, you're probably safe. I'm going to say they have credible information. But if you're going to joesblog.com and saying that Joe knows everything, I'm going to start questioning you. .orgs are organizations. These I would consider a step up from .com or .net because you do actually have to have an organization have this type of domain name, but still, I have seen bigfootisreal.org before, so you still got to question it. You got to use your best judgment, but it is a step up from .com or .net. Now these last 2 types, I will never question them if you cite a .edu or a .gov. One, because a .government site, it's a government site. They should post factual information. And to be honest, I don't see a lot of students cite .gov because it's really just objective, factual, like consensus data. It's really, really dry. So I just don't see it happen a lot. .edu sites are nice because you may have a college professor or teacher that is trying to get their work out there. So sometimes they post on the actual website for the college. So if you cite anything off of that, I would consider it credible. I think it would work. This is not a perfect chart, but it is a nice go-to if you're looking at sources and you're thinking, okay, is it credible or not? It's just a nice go-to. And then if all else fails, you can use this source here to look at how sources are credible or not. Does your site have an author? Unless it's a medical or education or corporate website, it should have an author attached. There used to be a local paper that kind of ran around Southern Illinois called The Disclosure. And I always used it in my rhetoric class in English 121 as a bad example of rhetoric, because if you noticed on that publication when it was out, there were never authors attached to any of the stories. And as an instructor, I would tell my students, if you don't have enough confidence in the integrity of your work to put your name on it, something is wrong. And there's a reason why it should not be credible or considered credible. And that publication never featured authors, so I didn't consider any of it truthful or factual. Now, there are medical readings that don't have authors, but that's because medical documents want to appear universal. They don't want to have an author attached to them. So, like social workers, if you're a social work major, you'll come to find out that your work never really has your name on it. It's just put out there to the public as factual information. So there's exceptions to it, but if you just find an article on a blog and no one's name's attached to it, I'd be a little skeptical on whether or not it's credible. Are your sites advertising anything on them? Obviously, people have to make money to promote their websites, so advertisements are not uncommon. However, if the site you're on is nothing but ads and nothing but banner ads and things like that, you might question its credibility. Why are they needing so much banner money to get their website up and running? You might question that. And then, does the site look professional? Does the information show bias or objectivity? So the main thing is, use your brain, use your big brain, and just be aware when you look at these things if things look legit or not. I mean, you use your best judgment, but hopefully these last few slides give you a few pointers while you're navigating to know if things are credible or not. And then when you're looking at fact versus personal testimony, factual information is objective. It's backed by experts, reliable surveys, statistics. In English 121, in my version of it anyway, we talk about ethos and logos. Ethos is your own credibility and logos is logic, so factual information has both. Personal testimonies are more subjective. They're all about the experience of an individual, so they rely more on emotional rhetoric, so pathos. They are tugging at your heartstrings and making you connect to the story rather than just giving you some data or statistics that aren't quite as emotional or humanized. All right. And then the last thing, the last Greek term is kairos, making sure your sources are timely. Now, typically, the rule of thumb is that your articles and sources should not be older than 5 years old, especially in as technologically advanced as we are now. Things get dated pretty quick. The exception to this rule is if you're looking up specific background information. So if you're writing about the effects of smoking, for example, then you would need to know some information that's older than 5 years, and that's okay. But you just don't want all of your main sources to be out of date. So usually if you stay within, like it's 2019 now, if you're doing 2014 and up, you're good, which is insane to say. But if you go back to a 1992 article, it might be a little more questionable. So just try to be timely, keep up-to-date sources, and that should help you make sure your argument and your goal of your paper is as functional as possible. Okay, so 17 minutes in, and now we're getting to MLA. So if you're just now joining us for the MLA part, make sure you go back and watch credibility in your sources for paper 4. But MLA stands for the Modern Language Association. It was founded many years ago by a group of old white guys doing English and determining ways of recognizing authors for the works that they have done. It's a way of giving credit where credit's due, which I'm a big promoter of. If you've ever wrote something that's been published, then you know the hard work that goes into that document, and I know from having stuff worked on and published that I would hate for somebody just to steal my ideas and claim them as their own instead of, giving me credit or at least referencing it. Because referencing and crediting, MLA is free. These people do years worth of blood, sweat, and tears to give you information, and you just cite it for free. So it feels like we need to do a service to our authors to give them credit. Now, there are 2 ways that you use MLA in your papers. The first is anytime that you reference a source or quote a person word for word, you need to end that sentence with what we call an in-text citation. That means it is in the essay itself, and it's just a quick reference, and we will go over what those look like. Usually when people think of MLA, they think of the works cited page, which is the page at the very end of the paper that cites all of the sources you used in MLA format. So you have in-text citations, which are in your essay, and you have your works cited page, which is at the end of your essay. Those are the 2 ways in which we use MLA citations. With in-text citations, these are little bits of the source in parentheses that you put after the reference that you make. So, for example, here I say, Professor Billingsley stated the importance of, quote, completing all of the tasks of the project on time, end quote. And then I have my in-text citation, which in this case is a web URL, ilstu.edu, which is Illinois State's website. Anytime that you use a source in your paper, you need to place an in-text citation immediately after you use it and cite it in the works cited page at the end of the essay. So what I've told students in the past is if you are using the same source over and over again in the same paragraph, you really only need to put the in-text citation at the end of the paragraph, and that's it. If you're citing multiple sources within the same paragraph, then you need to, at the end of each reference, put the in-text citation. I've had students ask, so if I'm not quoting it word for word, do I still need the in-text citation? Yes. Anytime you are referencing information that you were not born with, that is not common knowledge, you need to cite it. So if it's not common knowledge, if it's something you've picked up from a source, even if it's not word for word, even if you're paraphrasing, you still need the in-text citation. Now, there are two types of in-text citations, and honestly, I think these are pretty easy. The in-text citations, I think, are a lot easier to get than the regular works cited page citations. You have print documents, which is anything, like I've got this notepad here, anything you can touch, and you have web documents, which are online or digital. If you are using a print source, you kind of go like on a tier of options. You always start with option 1. If that doesn't work, go to option 2. If that doesn't work, go to option 3. So with a print source, if your source has an author, but you don't state it in the actual paper, you're just putting an in-text citation after a quote, you will put the author's last name and the page number, and that's it. So here I have the article noted, quote, pandas are the cutest animals. So my quote is Billingsley, the last name of the author, and the page number that it's found on. That's it. That's the in-text citation. That is everything. All you need. If your source doesn't have an author, though, you could just do the page number. That would be pretty simple. Or you can put the title of the text in italics or quotation marks, depending on what type of text it is, in parentheses. So here you'll notice, instead of just saying the article noted, I specifically say the author's last name. So Billingsley pointed out pandas are the cutest animals. Well, I don't want to put Billingsley here because I mentioned him here. So instead, I will put the title of the book and the page number, and that's it. So first, go for the author's last name and the page number if it's a print source. If you don't have an author, or if you've already stated the author in the sentence, then just do the title of the book and the page number. And that's it. Those are your two options. For print sources, that is all you need. All right. Digital sources, you only have two options as well. So one is to just put the author's last name. Now, any source that is digital, there are no page numbers. So a website will not have a page number, a video won't have a page number. If it's digital, you just put either the author's last name, or if you don't have an author, or you state it in the sentence, you put the basic web URL. So this Billingsley article from before is from the New York Times. So here, since I say Billingsley's name, I will just put nytimes.com. And that's it. So print sources, you're either doing the author's last name and page number, or the book title and page number. For digital sources, you're either doing the author's last name or the web URL. That is it. You have 4 total options for in-text citations. That is it. So I honestly think they're not too hard, but they do. MLA is one of those things that the more you practice it, the better you will get. So that's why I want to give you all this presentation fairly early, so you have time to practice with these types of citations and techniques. The works cited page comes at the end of the paper, and you will label the top center line of your page as just works cited. Please make sure your works cited page is always on a separate sheet. So don't just end your paper and put the works cited there. It needs to be on its own sheet. Your sources should be in alphabetical order by the first letter in the source, whether it's their last name, title, whatever, should be in alphabetical order. All right. If you've been looking at the discussion forums, you will probably notice that in some of my replies, I've been politely correcting people's titles because I want you all to make sure you get those right. So I have students ask me, okay, is it italicized or is it in quotation marks? It depends on the length of the text. If you are dealing with a long piece of text. So books, novels, memoirs, television shows, journal titles, entire websites, music albums, those are in italics, which I have done right here. Okay, this actually goes over here. If you're dealing with short texts, so chapters in books, episodes of a TV show, poems within an anthology, songs within an album, a newspaper or journal article, or a web page title, those are in quotation marks. So if you need to save this page or screenshot it or whatever, please do so, because when we do our discussion forums and when you do your papers, just make sure to follow this method right here on what you italicize and what you put in quotation marks. Citations, like I said, started out with just books. And so when we first started using MLA, this was the formula. You have your author's last name, a comma, the author's first name, the title of the work in quotation marks or italics, the publisher, the date, and the medium. That's it. The medium is the type of source that it is. So if it's a print source, you would put print here. If it's a digital source, you would actually put web. So this, when you do your works cited page at the end of your paper, this is the format for your basic source, like a book. Like your book will be your author last name, first name, the book title, you can see I've put it in italics, the publisher, and the year of publication. That's it. Books have gotten really simple in the last version of MLA. So my example is John Smith, so Smith, comma, John. A Day to Remember is in italics. Penguin Press is the publisher, and that's the year. That's all I need. Nothing else. So streamlined. It used to be you add different things like print and the city it was published in and all this extra junk. Not anymore. They've really streamlined books. So this is all you would need. It's pretty simple. Websites get a little more complicated, but not too much. You still have the author, first name, author, last name, first name. That's still there. The title of your web page is in quotation marks. The entire website is in italics, your web publisher, your date published, and the link to the website. So my example down here is I have Tanya Murphy. So there's Murphy, comma, Tanya. Immigration Reform on the Forefront is my title of the paper. My website is the NY Times, nytimes.com, or you can just put NY Times. My publisher is New York Times Online. My date is the 30th of September 2014, and then there's my link to the article. Now, something that a lot of students miss is that when they're doing the web URL and the web publisher, you will notice that NY Times and New York Times Online aren't the same, but they are, right? We know that the New York Times Online owns NY Times. That's very apparent. Because of branding and marketing, most websites, their URL is what they are. So like SIC, our website is sic.edu. So I would have in italics sic.edu, but my publisher would be Southeastern Illinois College. So you may have some repetition there, and that's okay. It's all right to have that repetition throughout, as long as you are addressing it in your citation. As far as we do dates, in MLA, we go day, month, and then year. So you'll have like 24 September 2014 or 14 May 2014. If you use a month with more than 4 letters, like September here, please abbreviate it. With MLA, you only need the main part of the URL. So like what we did back here, you'll notice I just had NY Times, not nytimes.com, not nytimes.com/5888 story, whatever, just NY Times. So here, NY Times is all we need for the main part of the URL. You can still save the full link at the end of the citation. So like right here, I have the full link here. So I can click on it and go straight to the article. All right. Journal articles are the hardest things to cite in MLA because there's so many parts to them. I think that's what makes them difficult. You still have the author last name, author first name. That part's not changed. Your article title is in quotation marks. Your journal is in italics. Then you have volume, issue, year published, and pages. So you have all this extra information. So, for example, we have Jane Doe. We have Pavlov's theory let me go back. Pavlov's theory is the name of the article, so it's in quotation marks. The American Psychological Journal is the name of the journal, so I have it in italics. I have my volume 14 here, issue 5, the year, and the page number. That is it. The nice thing about journals is that usually they supply you with all the information you need to cite, so it's just putting it all in the right order. But if you need to look that over, that example is there for your reference. If there's any type of source that I have not mentioned in this video, then I would go to Purdue OWL. And I know a lot of, we're going to say it's okay. I know a lot of people recommend Purdue OWL. It honestly is really helpful. If you don't know what Purdue OWL is a site made by students at Purdue University in Indiana. It's fantastic, and it gives you a lot of information about citation. So like they talk about MLA here. They actually have a YouTube channel and they do a vidcast series, so that's pretty helpful if you want to watch videos. They also have an APA guide, Chicago Manual, MLA. These two styles of citations are just different formats. Because, we can't just have one format. Where's the fun in that? But MLA as a guide is available. And they've got some links there. I'm going to go back to Purdue's homepage. It looks overwhelming. Purdue's homepage does look a bit overwhelming because there's so much information. If I were you all, I would, under this formatting and style guide out to the left-hand side, I would look at basics, electronic sources, and other common sources, because this is going over stuff we've already gone over in the presentation. Electronic sources shows you how to cite various things, like we get here an entire website. An image shows you how to cite an image. An article in the scholarly journal shows you how to cite an email, a listserv, a tweet. Tweets are my favorite because they're so cute. Look, it's got little @Tom Brokaw. It's got the whole tweet. It's got the date and Twitter on it. Adorable. Got the time it was tweeted. It's adorable. See? So, shows you how to cite a YouTube video. Lots of good stuff, right? Definitely look at this page on Purdue OWL. It's the electronic sources. Look on there if you're looking for some help with that. And also look at, when I go down here, other common sources. Because you may not think that you can cite an interview. You can! It's the easiest thing to cite in MLA. It's literally the last name, first name, personal interview, and the date. That's it. Interviews are the easiest things to cite in MLA. Because they are. Now, if it's a published interview, you've got a little bit more information to put out there. But if you're just interviewing your friend about your topic, easy. Shows you how to cite speeches and lectures from class. So if you're talking about a topic in one of your classes here at SIC, you can write that down and cite it. Totally doable. You can do paintings and sculptures, a song or an album, films or movies, television shows. There's a lot. Podcasts. There's so many things you can cite in MLA, and I do appreciate that about it. So definitely check out Purdue OWL if you've never been on here. If you need to use it as a source, please do so. But also, you have your Cengage handbook, and it has that little cutout handout that I love. Use that too. It's up to date. It's a good resource. As always, if you have questions about the assignments, feel free to let me know, because that's what I'm here for, is to answer your questions and to help. But MLA is one of those things that the more you do it, the better you will get. And that's really all I can say about it, is that you will get better with MLA. It just takes time. And so we'll be doing a lot of little practice things with MLA throughout the semester. So hopefully that will help get everybody up to speed and comfortable with using MLA before we get to using it in our actual papers. But if you have any questions, please let me know. Email me, contact me. Don't hesitate. There will be some assignments where I ask you, how are you feeling about MLA? And just answer honestly. If you're like, I don't get how to do this, let me know. But as always, I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great week. And if you have any questions, just let me know. All right? See you all. Bye.